Jocelyn Stewart, also known as the Messy Military Lawyer on TikTok, Instagram, and even here on YouTube. When you are facing the very real possibility and likelihood of a referred evaluation, whether you're being relieved from your position, if it's command or otherwise, or you're simply being made to respond to derogatory information in your evaluation, the number one thing you need to keep in mind is that you should not sign it right away. Don't sign. A lot of people don't realize that you have the right to respond and to comment directly to the rater and the senior rater comments. You should. The first process that you want to undertake is going through that evaluation with a fine-tooth comb. There are often multiple different administrative errors, whether it's the time that that person was evaluating you and had the opportunity to observe you under the appropriate regulations, or if they're adding in information that they cannot and should not per the different regulations. Every time we assist someone in going through and commenting about a specific referred evaluation, we go through each of those regulations every single time. The audience is not only the rater and not only the senior rater, because you have the ability to ask them to actually change the evaluation, to point out flaws in their analysis, and to point out specific subparagraphs of the pertinent regulations that they're violating by either including derogatory information that is not validly substantiated or otherwise. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that you have to go through this process of responding and providing comments to the evaluation as part of the process. If all you do is sign, your comments are never preserved. If you ever want to later try to appeal that evaluation, the first question that all reviewing authorities are going to ask is whether or not you actually availed yourself of all possible avenues. We call this exhausting all of your administrative remedies. And if you have not, they will, HRC or PERS or whatever your branch specific folks are, will return it to you without action. You have to provide comments to the evaluation. You do that for a number of reasons. Firstly, obviously, you need to preserve the rights that you have later. Secondly, you're honestly trying to persuade your rater and or senior rater to make the evaluation more favorable. We often ask in almost every case why that evaluation should not even be referred in the first place. Why it actually should just be a change of position, a change of station, an ordinary course of the evaluation. Most times that's because the command has not followed all of the due process that you have procedurally and substantively up until that point. It's so critical at this stage to point out every single flaw in all of the processes, because if you don't, you aren't preserving those issues later. So, number one, you're exhausting all your administrative remedies for future possible appeals. Number two, you're also trying to persuade that rater and that senior rater to actually change their evaluation of you. Number three, you're also stalling. So part of the process of going through this is that you're probably also facing parallel administrative measures. When that's happening, when you're trying to advocate to the command why they need to be giving you all of the process that you're due under each of the regulations, and how whatever it is that they've done has probably skipped over multiple steps, you're also maybe trying to make your next rank, and you're hoping that this evaluation doesn't make it into your board in time, right? So and plus, it's just another paycheck. If you are a probationary officer or you're someone who has fewer than 6 years in service, every paycheck counts. Every obligation that you can fulfill is another supervisor who's watched you do your job while you're going through this. And so there's multiple reasons why you want to ensure that you are availing yourself of all these processes. Commenting on the evaluation is also critical, because if you do face promotion board later, those comments should be read by all those reviewing authorities. Hit a like, hit a subscribe, stay tuned for more information from Jocelyn Stewart and the Messy Military Lawyer.